leadership is a value. It's not a title. For any individual in the workplace today, resilience, I believe, is a essential competency. Leaders have a bias towards action.
Natasha D'Souza, a globally recognized business journalist.
Leaders are often individuals who show up with conviction. They know how to listen to their instincts and trust their instincts. Learn to trust the immense repository of data points that are packed into your subconscious.
What would you call as the pivotal moment in your career?
I'd reached a point in my corporate career where I felt I'd hit a plateau. That phase was when I realized that I had to be the captain of my own career ship.
You had to be the leader. In today's episode of the pod, we have Natasha D'Souza, a globally recognized business journalist, executive coach, and a speaker. She's contributing to the Harvard Business Review and other top media outlets. With a dynamic career spanning strategic roles at leading institutions in Washington, D.C. and Dubai, Natasha has interviewed iconic figures like Malcolm Gladwell, John Scully, and Jacqueline Novogratz. Her work explores the future of leadership, innovation, and work, inspiring audiences through her thought-provoking insights. As a sought-after speaker and summit moderator, Natasha is dedicated to empowering leaders to navigate change and drive transformational growth. Natasha, welcome to the pod. It's so good to have you here.
It's so good to be here. Thank you.
You have such an illustrious career. Let's just start with, how did you get into this space?
Well, thank you for that. I feel I'm just beginning, though. It's interesting at this point for me in my career. I'm 22 years into being in the workforce. And I think that's that point where you actually start playing back to yourself. What are all the chapters that I've been through? Right. What are the things that worked for me, that didn't work for me? And like you said, how did I get here? And what I find really interesting is I often feel that where you begin sets the tone for perhaps how your career might play out. And when I look back, what I found is the common thread for me in the last 22 years has been anything and everything to do with leadership. Because when I started my career, 21 years old, moved to Washington, D.C., it was my second experience of, the whole big city experience, because I'd worked in London before briefly when I was in college. And moving there, my first role was for a business intelligence think tank called the Corporate Executive Board. It has since been acquired by Gartner.
Okay.
And essentially, it was started by, I think it was an ex-McKinsey alum who had started that. And the whole idea was you'd have there were different departments, but each department catered to a specific organizational function. So, for example, I was part of the Marketing Leadership Council, and our clients were VPs, SVPs, CMOs, you name it, from Fortune 500 companies and Global 2000 firms, essentially. So they were our clients. So I would be, like I said,
interacting with the
21, I'd have a manager. We'd get on calls with an SVP at Sony who wants to know, how can I better market certain kinds of consumer electronics for Hispanic, the Hispanic markets audience, in the United States. So from the very beginning, I learned how to communicate with leaders in a way that's cogent and gives them, again, you're producing these intelligence briefs on a tight turnaround.
Correct.
So I learned how to distill information really quickly, how to put it together in a way that if I presented it to an executive leader, it would give them a roadmap that could guide their decision making. So that's kind of carried myself through. I mean, from there, I think it was right place, right time.
Sure.
Was exploring opportunities in Dubai because I felt I'd reached a plateau in DC after about 4 years. And happened to, in my typical style, which is I always love to knock on doors, introduce myself.
Right.
I happened to introduce myself to someone who was leading the Harvard Medical School Dubai Center at the time, which was in Dubai Healthcare City. A very senior cardiothoracic surgeon who is now the chief, academic officer essentially of HMSDC. And they had huge goals, a huge remit at the time because Dubai, and specifically, Sheikh Mohammed wanted to build Dubai as a destination for not just medical tourism, but also to offer world-class healthcare.
Absolutely.
And as part of that equation, the idea was to create an academic medical center. You'd have a medical residency program similar to the ones you'd find at the top institutions in the U.S. Right. So I became part of that core team, and again, working with very senior individuals at a young age, I think that's what I, learned early on, and that carried through. One thing led to another. I found myself working across different entities under Dubai Holding, which, as you know, is a semi-government, conglomerate here. And my immediate bosses would be the deputy CEO or CEO. And I'm, again, around the kids. And I was
leadership.
Really young. So I was in this environment, specifically in this for a couple of years. And I think when you then move into that, into business as usual, it just not feels, the same. It wasn't giving me the stimuli and I think the pace that I needed. And I think that's when this different phase of my career took off, which is, what are the other talents and gifts and curiosities that I want to expand upon? And that began my, again, journey into tech journalism about 10 years ago.
And also, through your topic, I can see the leadership evolution, how things have changed. But in the early years, all of us, have to overcome hurdles, right? So what strategies do you recommend for leaders who are starting their journeys? There are so many tech startups here. There are so many even media startups for that matter. It's in a growing phase at the moment. So how do they overcome the hurdles? Because you have such a... they're not corporates, right? So they don't have all the resources that corporates have.
You'd be surprised. Not all corporates are as resourced as they may seem. I mean, I think the size of a corporation or its financial success is not necessarily an indication of how their leaders are receiving the resources that they require. Now, to your question about how leaders can overcome hurdles, I think it's important for any leader, regardless of where you are in your journey and regardless of title, because I'm of the belief that leadership is a value. It's not a title. It's not because I'm now the founder or now the chief XYZ officer.
But do you think it would be same for a candle making business and probably a multinational company?
So leadership traits I see as being the ones that allow folks to be successful.
Right.
Whether you're a titled leader or an untitled leader are the same. Those traits are the same. And this is what I've seen. Regardless of how old you are, regardless of whether you have an MBA or not, those traits that I've found are the same. Leaders are often individuals who show up with conviction. They know how to listen to their instincts and trust their instincts. Because many of us, we can hear our instinct, but we don't trust it and actually
take the next step.
And the next thing is taking the next step, acting on it. So leaders have a bias towards action. And ideally, you have in that loop, listening to your instinct and acting on it happens relatively quickly, because then when you take an action, you have the opportunity to see how that action plays out. And then if need be, course correct. Leaders also need to have the humility to understand, I listened to my instinct, and I'm glad I did that, but maybe this isn't working out the way it should. So let me regroup. This is where we have to shove ego to the side, to be humble and actually think about what do I need to do to take the business forward.
And also, that would be a good lesson in building resilience, probably.
Resilience is key. I think for any leader, any individual in the workplace today, resilience, I believe, is a essential competency. And leaders, when you're at the helm of a team, can do a lot to actually build the team's resilience. And think about the fact that we're living in even more volatile economic times.
Absolutely.
So the economic cycles are moving far more rapidly than they ever have in the past. And I think our leaders set the tone for the team's resiliency overall, because everyone's going to have a different resilience quotient in the team.
Right.
But when you pull your team together, you galvanize folks, give them the inspiration and the direction for how we can pursue goals. And if you don't meet them, because I'm looking back to an experience I had during the financial crisis. 2010, there was a US $2 billion project that was meant to be turned around and restructured because there was a risk of liability at that time for the firm that I was working with. And I remember, that was the phase when there was a complete crisis of confidence with a number of stakeholders, in the ecosystem. A lot of people were simply not paying towards projects that they'd made investment commitments for. So I remember you're in a situation where nobody actually believes that this project is going to take off. It's going to happen. So why should I pay? So you can imagine every single day you basically are punching through concrete to try and make your way forward, and that takes a toll on individuals. And this is where I think the a leader who was at the helm of our team at that time was really crucial there in, keeping everybody's spirits up. True. Making sure everyone is laser focused. I remember at the end of the day, he would send an email saying how much we collect at the end of the day. So we knew where were we moving.
And where you stand also. It also is a great culture setting example, I believe, to be transparent, to be open.
Yeah, and it was a team effort. And he wasn't sending that email just to somebody specifically who was handling financial stuff. It was everybody. We were a team working towards the overarching goal. And I think it's important for leaders as well because we all have our ups and downs. But I noticed the leaders that I work with, if they were facing downs, they definitely shielded that to their team from that. So the best leaders I work with did not exhibit mood swings. If they were having a crappy day, they probably didn't come to the office until a little later in the day. Maybe they had that morning for them to ease into it, to just, blow off steam from whatever, bad couple of days they've been having.
And that's a great point, and of course, all of us have good and bad days. Coming to a pivotal moment in your career, because it's spanning across, I think, probably 20 years, right? It's almost 2 decades. What would you call as the pivotal moment in your career?
I honestly can't say there has been one pivotal moment.
Right. Small things.
Because I think, I mean, every experience has led to the next. Exactly.
If we have to specifically talk about, say, tech journalism, how did you get into this space?
So I remember I'd reached a point in my corporate career where I felt I'd hit a plateau. And I was addressing that plateau in the same way I'd done in plateaus of the past, which was, what are the opportunities that are there? Who else should I be meeting with? Who else should I be talking to? And I was doing all of that, but none of it was actually resulting in a role that was interesting.
Right.
And a lot of people I was meeting at the time didn't quite understand where to place me because my career journey had been so varied up until that point. So I remember then this is where one could say this is a pivotal point because I think that phase was when I realized that I had to be the captain of my own career ship.
Right.
And I wasn't necessarily under.
You had to be the leader.
I wasn't necessarily under the helm of some great leader who could pave the way for me or who I could go to and say, hey, I want to do something else like this, which is what I'd done in the past. I think now I really took on full ownership of my career and the direction I wanted to go in. And I think that for me, taking that ownership, turn things around. So then for me, tech journalism, honestly speaking, it was just reaching out to, I think it was the editor of WAMDA, which at the time was one of the few that were covering startup and tech stories in the region. Yeah. I had no journalism clippings, just FYI. I was a good writer, and I had a lot of experience in executive communications in that realm, but I'd never actually written something in the newspaper ever, for a long time.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, when I was a teenager in Dubai, I used to write for the paper. So they used to give me assignments.
It just came back to that probably.
Because I'd been doing work on social enterprise as a volunteer. I'd been growing a social enterprise community at the time. Yep. So I had a few connections at that point of, with VCs, etc. So I just reached out to her and I said, I kind of want to write about this because they just covered our work. So I had she gave me an opportunity to go and cover, I think it was a pitching competition at the time. And one thing led to another. But that for me, I think, kind of set me down a path that I didn't have any specific goals. It was just for me, I wanted to do something that was different, expand my network outside of the corporate world that I was in, because I think if you're not careful, you can be in a bubble. Yeah. And the longer you stay in a bubble, the more you limit opportunities. So it was great to actually break out of it, meet people at that time in what was a very burgeoning. It was just blooming, the Dubai tech and startup scene. This is around 2014. So to meet a lot of different people, work on a few interesting assignments, and then
that's amazing.
And then for me, I think early on I realized that if I wanted to be really good at what I'm doing, that meant that I would really have to put myself out there for bigger titles, working under maybe editors who'd had a lot of time under their belt at global networks, etc. Because I realized that's the only way I could actually grow myself. So but it was a great stepping stone though for me in the beginning to be able to write about the scene here and
that's
get my
amazing.
feet wet.
And your journey has been so inspiring. I mean, I'm sure it would inspire future leaders to, not stick to one particular format and express themselves in the best way possible. This brings me to the end, and I would like for you to give that one piece of advice to anybody who's going to, probably who wants to make their mark as a leader.
Listen to your instincts.
Oh, that's a
You
fair
need,
point.
the more leaders learn to trust the immense repository of data points that are packed into your subconscious that you've had from your number of career experiences, negotiation experiences,
Right.
all of that. Learning to trust that and step into that more, I think, is what's going to allow you to not just make your own mark as a leader, but actually create outcomes that
True.
your team can be inspired by, that's going to create your own legacy for the different companies that you work, the companies that you're building. So
Yeah.
listening to your instincts.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Natasha. It was lovely having you on the pod, and look forward to doing some awesome work together.
Thank you so much for having me. It was wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Subscribe now and join us on this beautiful journey.